Dive. This is Dive, a podcast where we bring you the sweet sounds of John eating a regular breakfast variety burrito. John? Oh, magic.
It's my nightmare. Still my nightmare. Still my nightmare.
It's been a while.
I can't even. It's been over a year.
Has it actually been over a year?
I think so. I think it was prior to or just after Halloween of 2019, before the end of the world occurred.
Check the tape.
Before Kobe Bryant died, which started off the worst year in modern history.
I've forgotten that. I've blocked that from
Now
my
I
mind.
think about it once a week, probably.
I try not to because I'm so sad.
It hurts.
I was trying to find our podcast on Spotify. I don't even think we are on Spotify, friend of the show. Dive Podcast.
Yeah, it's just really hard to find this specific podcast on Spotify for some reason.
Too many things named Dive.
Too many dives in the kitchen.
Too many dives. February 12th, when we put out the hit episode, Who's Pork and Palpy?
Who is Pork and Palpy?
Still, we don't know to this day, right? Like, there's been a lot of Star Wars movies, shows, things have happened. Maybe not movies. Things have happened since then, but still no word on who's porking. Just none.
Factual.
Anyway, is this us starting the show? Like, is this how we're starting it?
I don't know. Do we want to start the show this way?
I'm fine with that. John's
John?
eating a burrito still. He doesn't have much of a say in anything.
Almost done.
Where have we been? What's been happening? Do we want to talk about that?
I mean, we could talk about that briefly. I think that kind of goes into what we're going to talk about anyway.
Kind of, yeah. Except for John.
It leads into it, at least, yeah.
He's just here.
Eating a burrito.
He tried to
Almost
spend $1
done.
million, but it didn't work out.
So, obviously, like every other human being pretty much on the planet, most of us have been in lockdown, or at least some version of it at some point since March 13th. That's been a crazy time.
March 13th, that was 1 month and 1 day from the hit episode, Who's Pork and Palpy? A Star Wars deep dive.
In that time, what have I been doing? From March 13th until July 20-something-th, I went home to my house where I'm sitting now, and I worked from this spot. I lost 85 pounds.
Hey.
I got pretty heavily invested into doing yard work and home improvement projects and woodworking projects. And I learned a lot about plumbing and electricity and drywall and landscaping. And yeah, that's what I live with. I have 3 notebooks, one for work, one for home improvement projects, and one for let's call it sparse journaling.
You actually write things down with your hands.
Yeah, I do. And I very much enjoy using technology, but at the same time, these notebooks have kept me sane because I can cross it off physically and feel a little bit more accomplished.
Yeah, that does feel better. You can cross it off as hard as you want.
Yeah. And I do. And I have a black pen, a red pen, and a blue pen.
Oh, nice. What's the
Fisher Space Pens, friend of the show.
Oh, nice. What's the color coordination?
Generally, I write everything down in black, cross it off in red, and blue is like either a change of topic or a specific note. And then I rotate filling in the lines because it's graph paper. It's a Field Notes, friend of the show, and it's graph paper. And I fill in the spaces of the graph when I'm done to completely fill up the pages. So that's my version of doodling. I'm a very symmetrical-minded person. And so when I have my notes laid out and I have empty space, I fill it in with like triangles and squares and X's and different shapes that follow the lines of the graph paper.
Oh, I was thinking you were going to write a whole list, start checking things off, and then grade yourself with red at the top, like A+.
No.
Great job.
But when I got promoted in the middle of the pandemic.
Great job, by the way.
From
Nice.
home. Yeah. And at the end of it all, I had a countdown at the end of my notebook, which is odd because I finished my notebook on the last day of my old job.
Oh, fitting.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of when I started counting down the days. I counted down the last week. And then that very last page, it just says, goodbye, old job.
Nice.
And then I filled in all this stuff.
It's also cool because you can look back on this. Like, you can find these notebooks later in life.
Yeah, so I'm saving them. I tell my kids all the time, I'm not throwing away shit, so you guys are going to have to go through all of my stuff when I am dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I mean it, I'm not throwing away anything that isn't garbage, so you can go through all of our stuff, and we have a lot of books. So, good luck.
Have y'all seen How To with John Wilson? The new, it's done by the same guy who did the Nathan Fielder show. What is Nathan For You?
Oh, no. I know Nathan For You, but I haven't heard the
I've
other
never
show.
seen Nathan For You.
So I think he executive produced the show or directed the show or something like that. And it's just this guy who takes a camera around and kind of films he just like films everything. And there was an episode about memory. And the narrator is also the guy who films it. And he also is kind of like the subject of the show. It's a weird show, but it's really interesting. He just walks around New York and like basically picks a topic to discuss. Like the first episode was small talk, and it was him trying to get better at small talk. But anyway, the episode about memory, he lets the viewers know that he has recorded everything that he has done for every day in these notebooks. And he graphs out like this calendar and then does these shorthand notes for literally everything he did that day. It is just like, it's so weird to see that much like content, but without substance.
It's Seinfeld for life. That's what that is. That's Seinfeld for life. It's like a journal about nothing.
I've heard that increases your memory, like retention, I guess.
So I've noticed that's odd that you say that, because I've noticed that my I felt like I've always had a pretty sharp memory. I don't remember things photographically. I remember things that people say pretty well, but I don't remember names very well. But I recognize faces almost instantly.
And you also remember when Hideki Matsui came in and crushed.
Listen, Daniel,
I believe it was the 2010 World Series, and I don't recall any of this.
Oh my God! If you don't value the high points of our friendship, I don't know why I have two defunct podcasts with you. Okay, this right here, Hideki Matsui, legendary.
I don't think it ever happened.
And the fact that you don't remember this blows my goddamn mind.
I don't even know if that really happened.
It happened.
I don't know.
And it was glorious.
That's a person.
And it bonded us closer than we had ever been to that point.
And broke us 12 years later. Oh, there it is. June 12th, Hideki. No, that's not.
No, this was October.
This is October, yeah. This article is just going over his achievements on his birthday. June 12th in 2008, he hit a grand slam on his 34th birthday. On June 12th, 2009, he hit a 3-run home run on his 35th birthday. I mean, good for him. There it is. 2009 World Series. He helped the Yankees defeat the defending champion Philadelphia Phillies 4-2 by hitting 8 for 13 with 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, and including tying Bobby Richardson's single-game World Series record with 6 RBIs in Game 6.
The fact that you don't remember that and you watched it with me.
How dare I?
Do you know how many responsibilities I shirked that whole week to just be up in Rochester with you?
I believe that happened, yeah.
Yeah, that definitely
happened. A lot of shirking.
So much shirking.
But that was not a theme, or that was not a one-off instance. That was a theme that was happening quite often.
Shirking?
A lot of shirking.
So much shirking. Yeah, I was a real slacker from the ages of 19 to 21.
A shirker?
Yeah.
So now we write down our goals and we record them in notebooks.
So now I have these notebooks, and I have noticed that my memory about the things that I didn't remember often, I remember more often and better. Also, if I had a superpower, it would be to recognize somebody from a TV show that they were in before they were famous.
Oh God,
I'm so good at that. I am so good at that.
I am amazing at this. And my best one to date is I was watching Golden Girls with my wife, and a cop showed up at the door in Golden Girls, and I went, "Hey, that's the guy from the ferry in The Dark Knight." And she was like, "What?"
Oh.
And I looked it up, and it was the guy on the ferry in The Dark Knight who could not flip the switch. And I picked him
Yeah.
out of an episode of The Golden Girls
Wow.
20 some odd years earlier. It was crazy. MASH is a really good show to pick out those people, SVU or the regular Law and Order.
My most recent one of those was the there's a show called Industry on HBO that Sheen was watching. I came down, I was like, I recognize that guy. Do you remember the blonde dude from Rush Hour? The evil guy who was,
Yeah.
It was that guy, but older and in a suit.
That's a good pick. Because
That's
when
a
you
good
can
one.
pick out obscure people from movies that like were popular but aren't super recognizable,
Right.
that's when it feels like most accomplished.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, we were watching. Nikki has been rewatching for like the 1,000th time Sex in the City, and because she found a podcast called Bradshaw Boys, where they watch every episode of Sex in the City and talk about it.
That's
Okay,
not a bad
and
idea
Sex
for a
in the
podcast.
City or Sex and the City?
Sex and the City,
No, we should make a podcast called Sex in the City.
and then just have sex in a city and
Yeah.
talk about the city,
Yes.
but like not mention the sex part
No.
at all.
No.
Leave everyone in suspense for the entirety of every episode, and then have a segment at the end where like, and now on to the sex. Bam, 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 Sex in the City, and that's the end.
Just like a fade to black
Yeah.
signal.
Yeah. I think we have
That
potential
sounds-
here.
That sounds good.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Anyway, so like she's watching that, and I'm like half watching it, and one of the guys that was having sex with Samantha, Kim Cattrall's character, I was like, man, I know him. I can't figure this out. And I don't ever look him up.
Yeah.
I just wait until it comes to me. And then I was like, he is the partner of Timothy Oliphant in Justified.
Justified.
And then I
Wow.
go, look it up. And I walked out of the room, and I came back in. She goes, you do that every time, right? And I go, what? And she goes, every time you can't think of one and then you think about it, you say it, you tell me to look it up, and you leave the room. I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's just satisfying.
The mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the mic drop of things people don't care about.
Sheen doesn't care enough to look it up, so I have to look it up after I call it. I'm like, oh, it's this person. And then I will be quiet for 2 minutes while I look it up. And then I'm like, yes.
You gotta
Still doesn't
tell her
care.
to get on board. You go, this is marriage, Sheen. You have to look these up.
Still doesn't
If
care
I-
even after you won.
If I have
Yeah.
to listen to the Bradshaw Boys podcast, Nikki's got to look these up for me. No, I don't listen to the podcast. I listen to her tell me about the podcast. What if she feels the same way about me telling her about our podcast?
Oh, I'm
Oh.
positive that she feels that way.
yeah, 100%.
yeah.
Gotta
Do you
be.
tell her about how our games go after we play?
Only
I do.
occasionally. She really doesn't care anymore. Like back when we were playing PUBG, I think she was like, okay, I'll listen. But now she's just like, how was stream night? And I was like, good. And she'll
Yeah.
go, good.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
I get to.
But
I'm okay with
before,
that.
when we were playing PUBG and we were sweaty into PUBG, I was like
moist.
telling her, and she was like, okay, all right, this is what I signed on for. This is, okay. Yeah.
I'll go like we had real bad encounters, or like we were playing well but we couldn't get a win. I'll do like some descriptors of some
Yeah.
things that happened, and like if I had a freaking crazy shot when I used to stream a little bit more, then I would show her some of the clips and be like, look how cool that was.
I show her
Yeah,
the funny
Nikki-
clips, like my awful English accent. I show her those clips.
I think it's perfect, Dan.
She doesn't
I think
care about the gameplay, but it's the funniness.
Yeah. The thing that I think Nikki does not care about at all is my plans for the house.
Oh,
She just likes the idea that it's going to be something that she can brag about to her friends that the house is really nice.
Oh.
But she's not, she's a super, super creative person, but
Right.
she doesn't think the way of planning for like projects.
Mhm.
And so like when I'm drinking my coffee, standing in whatever room or outside on my deck, looking and thinking about different projects to make, she knows that I'm going to come in and try and tell her about it. And she dreads it. She dreads it because I'm like, okay, come here. And she's like, And I'm like, I know, but I need to say this out loud to somebody who lives here, and our children don't know how to turn on a computer. So you're the option. Like, you need to come here. I'm going to explain this, and you just nod your head and say how cool it is, and then you can go away. And I usually go through, and she nods, and I'm like, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And she goes, I just can't visualize it. Like, what? Just I like that you've never you've never gotten it wrong. So like, why are you worried about it now? And I was like, I just want somebody to plan this with.
You just have to present the final project to be like, this is how great our lives would be if you would just let me buy and install blah 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 blah. You know?
Yeah, I know. Well,
like,
a lot of times
you gotta paint
now,
the picture.
I realize at this point I can just say, we needed this after I bought it, and she'll go, okay.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know, but she also like wants the house to look nice. So
you should do detailed designs, like learn CAD.
If I could draw or do that at all, I would. But I do have two good friends that that know how to use that stuff incredibly well.
Dan and John.
And they're
No.
Jesse, who made our Hot Drop logo.
Oh, the assets?
Oh, you got those assets?
I have assets. Thank you for asking.
That's a joke for no one.
Mm-hmm.
That's well, our audience base is no one, so it's fine.
Yeah. We're doing this for ourselves.
But that is kind of what I wanted to talk about anyways, like the planning and the home ownership and the repairs and all these things. I think that I was, and still am in some aspects, massively underprepared in life to own a home. And there is so much to the idea of having ownership over property that I don't think anyone is ready for. And it, like parenting or taking on a new job, you learn on the fly, and there are some serious mistakes in there. Yeah. And you kind of just hope for the best every day. And every time something breaks, you learn something that you wish that you didn't have to learn, but you're better for it in the end.
Yeah. I don't know if it's so much like not being ready for home ownership versus like not being ready to go from essentially an apartment to a 2,000 plus square foot home that, you know, could potentially have issues that you don't know about because it's on the older side. You know,
I mean, that's exactly what happened to me.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like that, you don't always necessarily know. Like if none of those things went wrong, like we wouldn't be talking about it. Right. Like, and you wouldn't be feeling like you weren't ready. Right. Because I feel like I moved into this situation. We bought a house in June and
in the middle of a goddamn pandemic.
Right at the outset.
Right at the beginning. Yeah. We saw the place
under the wire.
We like got in at pretty much the last weekend before they shut down open houses. We got in, we saw the place. There was a delay. We were supposed to move in May. There was a delay because everything was shut down and we couldn't get any of the towns to sign papers and all that crap. So we actually couldn't even go in to see the lawyer to actually sign the purchase and sale and all that stuff. So we had to like be there with just one person in the room, masks on. Like it was at the beginning, so it was way more freaky. Now that's just like normal life, but it was a whole big deal when we went in there to get it done. But we moved in June, and so I moved into an older house. Like when was yours built?
1962.
Yeah, mine was built in 59, I think. So like same age, but mine had been updated in 2017. So pretty much everything is new. And everything had been redone, so I wasn't concerned about stuff breaking. It's also a lot smaller house, but you know, coming in and seeing like how everything's put together and like learning about the house, and then I started tearing into the basement. Like I've never really felt super overwhelmed, but I've also felt like there's just fewer things to go wrong based on the size of the house and the fact that there's everything, all the main things are done. Like it doesn't need a roof, it doesn't need a water heater, it doesn't need a furnace, it doesn't need windows. Like in your situation, like there's so much more house, and it's also built in a different way. Like mine's a ranch, so it's just a square, a rectangle with, you know, the single load carrying beam down the middle of the house, right? If you're looking in the basement. So there's not a lot of complexity. So I felt a little better about knowing how things are all put together when it's just a rectangle. But in your case, I would definitely be way overwhelmed with the amount of work that went into building that house and not knowing how things are put together when you look at it.
Yeah. So to give all of you a little bit of background, I have owned my house for going on 3 years now. Dan just bought his house, and John and his wife moved into a new apartment, a year ago?
It'll be a year in February.
Yeah.
It
So
was right as we canceled our trip to China.
Yeah. So we're kind of all at different stages of either rental or ownership, and I think that lends to some pretty unique experiences. My house is technically a ranch style house, but it is a little bit more on the mid-century style house. It's got a lot of unique features. It's got a lot of unique custom windows and trim, and it was really well maintained. But now we are on like either the second leg or last leg of a lot of the fixtures and appliances from when it was originally built. There's a lot of stonework, sidewalks, and in 1990 they added an addition on to the house. So it's a ranch in the front and it's built into a hill. So the downstairs basement area is completely finished and is walk out into the backyard. Beautiful property, beautiful house. But I have found over the last year and a half or so that more things are starting to need some maintenance that I didn't know needed maintenance off the start.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's minor and cool to do, and some, as of recently, is pretty intensive, and I can do a lot of it learning as I go, but some of it I'm not sure that I can do. And that's been a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it for the most part. So I had last year, Christmas time, in the hallway downstairs, there is a load-bearing wall that shares with the hallway and my son's room. That right above that is where all my bathroom plumbing is for the upstairs. It's sort of like the junction for the whole house. For all of the plumbing comes through that area: hot water, baseboards, drains, and the main stack. And there was a leak in the hot water line. It had corroded through over time and sprang a leak into custom cabinetry and a built-in chest. Now, I filed a homeowner's claim for that because, stupidly, I didn't know how to do or wasn't confident that I would be able to do any of that.
And what does that entail? Like fixing the leak, tearing out drywall?
Yeah, they fixed the leak. They soldered on new copper pipe. They fixed the drywall. They put back together the cabinetry. They saved most of the components and then just rebuilt the cabinetry, put the drywall back up, painted.
Gotcha.
So that cost me a $500 deductible. And what they got out of it is they replaced everything, and then they painted half of my entire downstairs, not even the area, not just the area where the leak was. And so I was like, well, I guess that was worth it, because they painted an area of the house that had never actually been painted. It was all primer.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I was like, oh, sweet. I was going to I have this space in the back that is 600 square feet is the whole back half of the downstairs. They painted all of that. And I was going to make that back part of the library. So I was like, paint it this color. And they were like, cool, great, whatever. And they did it. And I went, that was worth it. That was worth the $500 that I didn't have to do any of the work. And I got a little bit more out of it than I thought. But I did it because I didn't think I could have done it. Mm-hmm. Now, about a month ago, my wife came and said, hey, that chest area is wet again. And I went, son of a bitch. And I went and looked, and sure as shit, the same area was soaking wet. And so I opened up the ceiling, and there was another pipe that had sprung a leak, but not the same pipe, but in the exact same location as the other pipe. And what I had found is there was a drain pipe from the bathroom sink, and the sink had been pretty much original, and so it had a copper drain pipe, which is not very common these days. And what they had done at some point was they cut the copper out and replaced the part with a PVC pipe and coupling, a rubber coupling. And around the coupling, it had corroded and degraded, and the drain pipe was leaking out of the end of the coupling all over. And so I had to tear out now the entirety of the work that they had done last year. And then I decided at this point, I need to open up this hallway to make it more easily accessible when I have to do repair work in this space. And so as you walk down, there is a closet, chest, cupboards, closet. Like sandwiched between the two closets are those two custom cabinetry things. I took out a full closet, took out the custom cabinetry, and then like raised the drywall because there was this weird header going across. I did not know how to do any of this except for how to hang drywall before this project.
Yeah.
But in the process, I detached the entire bathroom sink drain pipe, replaced the entire thing. I had never done plumbing before. I moved some electrical components. The header I found was only there to mask the fact that the drywall was a full 2.5 inches higher in one section than it was the others, because back when they did an addition, they notched into all my floor joists to run new plumbing and then capped it off with half of a 2x4 and hung drywall. But the other half of the hall, they didn't cap it and they didn't notch anything. They drilled holes into the joists, and so the drywall sat differently. So I created those shims of half 2x4s and matched the drywall height for half of my hallway. And now I came up to record this podcast, sanding and applying more drywall plaster to try and, get it back to where I need to be. So this has been a month of me doing it after work, or, sanding at night when everybody goes to bed, or trying to figure out times where I can figure out how to teach myself how to do all these things. And I didn't call a plumber. I didn't have anybody but my father-in-law give me advice on that electrical piece just the one time, because I replaced a light at the same time. And it feels good, but I also am winging it to save money and figure out what my house is made of.
So that's the question, is like, when you do all this work yourself, and I should ask this question to myself because I'm about to tell my story, but when you're doing all this work and you don't want to call anyone, how do you know that you're doing it the right way?
You don't.
You totally freaking don't.
Fucking don't.
But like with plumbing, at least, it's all very obvious how it should go together. Everything flows downhill. You have to know, like, okay, yeah, all the drains need P-traps, stuff like that. But like when you piece it all together, you're going with the flow of the water, and it's kind of like Legos, or kind of like, I don't know, a different type of building toy where it's like you just piece all the components together, the angles, the straight lines, the 45s, and it all has to go a certain way, and it's pretty clear how that has to go. With electric, who the frick knows how that works? I don't know. I don't know anything about how electric works. Luckily for me, the electric work that I did, the wires were already attached with the panel because I don't want to touch the panel. But I can hook up a light. If I have a bare wire, I know how to hook a light up. I know how to hook outlets up. I know how to chain those together. And that's just YouTube. That's YouTube and talking to my dad. But yeah, I mean, so many times you're doing something and you're like, I think this is right. I hope this is right. Like,
yeah,
but also
right,
if it's
and you
not,
messed it up.
Yeah. And in some ways, some things, it's like, yeah, you could totally start a fire. You could have a major leak. You could cause major issues. But on the other hand, if it's like framing, for example, yeah, your wall might not be straight, but it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to burn your house down. So I don't know. Yeah, like, I think eventually, as long as you have the right intentions and you have a good mindset of what's the right way to do things and what is a dangerous way to do things, as long as you avoid the dangerous way to do things, you're probably going to be okay. It's probably not going to cause major issues.
I feel like John has a pretty good mind for like making logical decisions on things that may be risky. And so, like, John, I know you don't have a house, but I feel like while we talk about this all the time, you probably are going to be in a much more like even keeled situation when you run into the same problems that Dan and I are running into right now, because like your assessment skills, I think, are top titty.
The thing is, that's true for things that I have like a good understanding. Like, I texted y'all to drill some screws into my wall, into some studs, because I don't understand. Like, as y'all have been talking about these problems, I've been asking a buttload of questions because I don't have any historical context for this stuff. Like, my parents were not super handy. If there was a leak, we called a plumber. There wasn't a lot of self repairs that were done in my parents' house. So my historical knowledge of this type of problem is very low. So while I have like an analytical type brain, it would be hard for me to assess problems and, get a good sense of things just because I don't have any of this information. Now I have a little bit better because y'all have been taking pictures and explaining things to me and really helping me understand what's going on. But I wanted to tie this back into a point which you made earlier, which is like, there's no manual that comes with owning a home.
Yeah.
And I think there are so many parts of life that are just kind of like the traditional trajectory of a life. Like you grow up, go to college, get married, buy a house, have kids, that type of traditional trajectory that isn't taught to children or adults or whatever. No one teaches you really, most of the time you're not taught how to manage money or what to do if something breaks in your house. Like, what is the process there? And I think that's a really good thing to take from both of y'all's experiences. It's like, what type of knowledge did you have to work for that you could pass down more easily to help somebody else in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think for me, part of it is definitely having my dad who did everything around the house. Like, he never hired anyone to do anything because he was so particular about how he wanted things done that he couldn't stand someone doing something the wrong way or having a blemish in it that he would always look at and say, I'm so mad that I see that every single day. That's not going to fly. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do it myself. It has to be perfect. I have picked up that mindset 100%. So that's me in a nutshell now. But I think it's also like, if you step further back beyond that, it's like knowing the limits, I guess. Like, yeah. For example, like, I didn't know how a wall is constructed until I broke into one and figured out how it's put together. But I didn't just go downstairs and start busting walls open with sledgehammers like they do on HGTV, right? Like, you go through very meticulously, like break it a little piece off, look behind, like try to figure things out. Don't just rush in and just break stuff and completely wreck your house, not knowing how to put it back together. So you have to deconstruct it in a way that you can remember how it was put back together. And taking pictures along the way is really helpful when reassembling. But it's like, it's kind of just also having like an analytical mind, like you're talking about, and not being scared to try, and also knowing that everything that you do can be undone. For the most part, unless you're talking about like cutting a wire too short. Well, yeah, you just made a lot more work for yourself. You're now going to have to install a junction box and run more wire, but it's not like you just broke it beyond repair. I realized, and I talked to my dad when I was, talking about whether or not I wanted to go into this basement rental project. And I was, talking about how nervous I was to do it, but also like I'm excited to do it. And his first question to me was like, what do you know about construction? And I'm like, nothing. Like, I'm just going to learn as I go. Like, he would ask me all the time, like, what are your plans for this part? What are you going to do with the ceiling? How are you going to do the floor? And I'm like, I have no idea. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm going to, get into it, break it apart, see how I'm going to piece it back together. And once I have it all apart, figure out what my best option is. Like, for example, if I tear apart the floor, I take up the carpet and realize, oh, there's water down there, and I'm not going to want to put a wood floor down in the basement. That's obviously a no-no to begin with. But I'm also not going to want to put carpet back down. After I've taken out this moldy carpet, I'm not going to want to put moldy carpet back in. So
what happened?
No, there actually wasn't water at all. So that was just an example. But, if I did rip up the carpet and found mold, that would change my trajectory. So it's like, I can only do so much planning up front is my point. You have to, break into it, figure out what your options are at that point once you see the problem from all angles.
But you had the confidence to know, if I take this out, I can put things back together.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really good, like, to me, before having talked to you guys about this stuff, like, doing things more than like screwing up picture onto the wall felt like a black box of unknowns.
Yeah, because like what's behind the drywall? Like what is a stud even? Like where are studs? How far apart are they? Do I need to put a stud in? Do I need to hang this on a stud? Is it too heavy? Like how do I know? Yeah.
What is the logical setup for a house? Like,
Yeah.
Like after seeing the framing that you did on the wall and how drywall sits on a wall, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can kind of picture it in my apartment now. I kind of understand what has to be done in order to make that kind of thing happen.
Yep.
So that's the thing that really helped me is watching and talking about plumbing and stuff and Cody's problem. That made me understand the systems in a house a lot better, because I understand like the mechanics of how a toilet works, but after it flushes, I don't know where it goes. But having Cody's plumbing problem really kind of like connected the dots kind of thing.
Yeah. The idea behind witnessing your house work like a machine, you can see like the imperfections and like how you can make it work a bit better. I had texted you guys the other day about that aerator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like for those who are listening who don't realize like what an aerator is, it's the thing that goes on the end of your faucets to aerate the water to, you know, essentially like give it that the bubbly feeling
flow,
so that your water's not flowing out in like solid like a solid flow. Sometimes it creates pressure, sometimes it lessens pressure. It depends on what kind of aerator you buy. Never once did I think in my house, I need to change out all my aerators, because the water came out. There are no complaints, except I had a complaint. I just never like thought of it in a solution oriented way, which is kind of my thing.
It's just how
which
it
is
is.
strange. It's kind of my thing is like come at things in a solution oriented way. But my downstairs bathroom had terrible water pressure. Like the cold water knob, you turn it on, it's got, you know, it came out pretty good, but like never changed in flow, no matter if you turned it on a little bit or a lot. It always just kind of came out. But the hot water was you could only turn it like a quarter of a crank and it was at full pressure, which still wasn't much pressure. And I was thinking the knobs are bad. It turns out it was just an aerator that had been clogged. And so like for whatever reason, it wasn't coming out evenly from either side. And so I bought a new shower head, some light bulbs, and whatever from NYSEG, because they have smart solutions, which is one of the greatest things that I didn't know about. If you have NYSEG or whatever their other sister company is, ERG or something like that, they have a sales website that if you're a customer with them, you get stuff for incredibly cheap, specifically light bulbs and shower heads, power strips. You can buy a light bulb for like $1 a piece.
Nice. I don't know that.
LEDs. Yeah. So they're all cost savings and efficient stuff. So like you have like low flow faucets, aerators, power strips. What do they have? Humidifiers, thermostats, all these things that you can buy super cheap. You can buy a Google Nest on there for $50.
Nice.
And those are like $120 all the time. But I bought a thing for $12. I got 9 light bulbs, a shower head, and an aerator. And the aerator changed my life. And I never would have thought general maintenance in your house is to check to see things that can be improved on.
Yeah.
And there are so many different subcategories of that like you don't know unless you're just searching for it. And so there are people who have no interest in any of this stuff that are never going to want to do it. And they want to call people to come and fix their stuff.
Right? Or they also
Or they don't.
might not even realize that it's a problem. Like
Exactly.
My water pressure is what it is. And that's,
Yes.
I didn't realize I could make it better.
Well, so like I have well system, I have all this stuff. And I thought like all these things combined created my water pressure and I can't change it. Over the last 2 weeks, I've realized that is not the case. And I have increased the water pressure in my house and the flow much better and more consistent than it ever had been before. Because in it, I have a well pump. The well pump runs off of 220-volt electricity, which I learned a lot about too. Comes out of the well into past my pressure switch, which keeps your PSI at a certain level and kicks on and off at a certain thing, which I found out. So in your coming off your well system, you have a ball valve that shuts off your water coming from the well. In order to turn off the actual water coming from the well, you have to turn the electricity off, because then the pump stops pumping and the pressure switch no longer engages. So it's not like if there's a leak in that and say the ball valve is broken, you need to change it out. You have to turn the electricity off to that pump so that water doesn't just come into your house when you take that apart. From there, it goes into like a diaphragm sort of. It's a pressure tank. And it's like blue, and it can be small or big or whatever. And that stores extra water to create the water pressure in your house. And so your well contributes a little bit to it, because your well can pump out anywhere from like 1 to, let's say, 10 gallons a minute is like crazy good water pressure. And that pressure tank keeps it consistent. So if it's storing things at the highest point, so pressure switches go in increments usually of like 20. So it's like older ones had 20 PSI to 50 PSI, and it kicks on when you use too much water and it goes down below 20 or 30, sorry. And then it stops pumping as hard when it gets to the top end, which is usually 40, 50, or 60 now. And I didn't know that before. And so I learned about that and checked the pressure in my pressure tank and realized it was a little bit off, because you have to find like a median inside of the pressure tank. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that before. So I checked that, and that led me to go, okay, well, what else don't I know about this? From that diaphragm, it goes to my water filter, which is attached to my water softener. And that filter needs to be changed out like every 6 months. That filter, if it is too full, slows the gallons per minute to your softener, which then slows the softener's rate of output back into your system.
So my question is, how did you even find out about any of this stuff? How do you know what you just said? Just by having a water softener, by having a well, or was it like
no?
A manual doesn't come with your house telling you like,
correct.
This goes from, you have a ball valve and you have a diaphragm and you have how did you figure this out?
Well, the second problem that I had in my house in the last month was I was frustrated with another problem that I'll get to in a bit. And I went to my checklist in my field notes book that it said, turn off the spigots for the winter, which I have not done before and didn't realize you had to do, is to turn off your outside faucets and drain those lines so that they don't potentially freeze and flood your house. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go and turn that off. I need to figure out how my water system works. And I went up and I was working. I thought I had found the thing for the spigots. And as I'm standing, turning the water off there, I have a UV light disinfecting system. So water runs through it, sanitizes the water, and kicks it back into my system. And that had, I think, the change in pressure messed with something, and water started pouring out both ends of this thing. There's an inlet and an outlet, and something disconnected. There's a quartz tube inside of it that holds the light, and that shifted and started spraying water everywhere. So I had to hit that ball valve and shut all the water off to my house, while getting mildly electrocuted in the process, because it's an electric thing. And I went and I'm standing by this thing, and I had to reach past the flow of water to hit the ball valve. And because there's a light in the middle of it and it was still plugged in, I felt myself beginning to get electrocuted as I shut this ball valve off.
Oh God.
And so I panicked and reached over with my right arm and unplugged the thing, guessing. I don't know, because I didn't know this thing was plugged in. Like, that's the thing. Like, I didn't know any of this. I just like quickly in slow motion, how those things work. And in retrospect, you were moving and you were thinking super fast, and you had like slowed time down. I noticed myself getting electrocuted, looked at the thing, the UV sanitizer, and followed a cord that was going to it to the wall and yanked. Because I instinctively went, I don't want to die. And I feel myself starting to get electrocuted. And I did it, and it stopped, and the water was pouring out, and then it kind of slowly stopped. And that's when I was like broken, because 3 things had gone wrong that day, and I was kind of like at a standstill, and I was in a really bad mood, and I didn't know what to do about it. So I called my friend who he knows so much about construction and plumbing and things, but he's one of those guys that like grew up having to learn that stuff on his own, but he was also a construction management major.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knows a lot about a lot of things, or a little about a lot of things, but a lot about actual construction. And so he was trying to explain to me like the basics of stuff, but then it got to a point where he's like, I really don't know what to tell you about water softener systems or UV systems. Like, you're going to have to figure that one out. And you hate hearing that. And so I was like, all right, man, like, I appreciate whatever you could have given me. And then I just started Googling. And in that, I figured out how this is all put together and what things were now wrong based on what I was looking up. Mm-hmm. And so what I found is my ball valve for my well is not where it needs to be. So ideally, your ball valve to shut off the water needs to happen before the pressure switch. And mine happens after the pressure switch, between the filter and the pressure switch. Mm. So I know now I have to move that. But then I had to figure out, like, all right, what do these other things do?
Yeah.
In between.
For the ball valve, is it it's an inward one, so the pressure pushes the ball forward to let water out, or is it the reverse so that there can't be a backflow?
That is, so that's part of that backflow, is that like it lets water in one way, the ball moves forward to open the valve, or not to open the valve. If it is open, the ball is up.
So it's not water pressure that is opening the ball valve. It's a system that
it's actively,
you said that was triggered by electricity.
The switch is triggered by electricity.
So the switch moves the lever, which pulls the ball
water
away from the entrance so that water can flow through.
The pressure switch kicks on the pump that is located outside in like a standing post, sort of. So the water well is vertical, pretty deep. And next to it is it's like a very long cylinder that may as well contain like radiation. It's like long and metallic. And you're like, oh, it's got unobtainium in it or whatever. And that electric line runs into the house to the pressure switch. And the pressure switch tells the pump water now, and it'll stop you, flip off when you hit 50 PSI.
So it's just the pressure that's moving that actual ball within the valve.
No, you move that manually. So that is literally just a quarter turn on a lever, but the water moving through when it is open does not allow for backfilling. So like, it's hard to kind of get that. It serves two purposes. You can manually open and close that thing because you need to be able to shut the water off. But the mechanism of that ball valve does not allow for water to go back, because the water moves forward, and if it tries to go back, it's stopped by the closure of that ball.
So the ball, okay. I think I know what you mean. You can manually trigger it, but it is the pressure that moves it in general, like from the well. Like you can manipulate it if you need to, but on its own, it's free flowing so that it can close the valve.
No, the ball valve has nothing to do with the pressure switch. They work separately entirely. If the pressure switch is not pumping water, there is no water for the ball valve to stop.
How stuff works, ball valves.
It is nuts. It's such a weird thing to learn about.
So in summary, you learned from Google. Like, that was your answer to my question.
Yeah. I literally, I figured it out because I had to know what I was looking at. And once I did it, I went, all right, well, I have to change out my valves that go into that UV thing. I had to figure out how my UV thing worked, which is outdated, and they don't sell that one anymore, but it's in perfectly good working condition. So I had to figure out where that manual was. I read the entire manual. I bought 2 replacement parts for it. I fixed those replacement parts. I figured out what Teflon tape does. I knew that Teflon tape was used like plumber's tape, but I did not understand what it actually did. until this project. And that's stupid to think about as a 31-year-old man who has seen incredibly handy people do things forever, that I wasn't privy to this information. Like, I've seen your dad work. Your dad has helped me do things. My stepdad is incredibly handy. I think my dad is very handy, even though he doesn't think he's very handy. You know, my girlfriend in high school, her dad was like, he did everything, everything. And like, I always had like admired those people for kind of being able to fix and do, and they understood it all. And I didn't have any of that information, but I'm learning it so fast now that I'm really confident in my abilities to take stuff on, but it comes at the cost of serious frustrations when you encounter something you don't know about and you feel as though time is of the essence.
Yeah. So it's like, it's confidence. It's knowing that you have backup from people that you know. And it's also knowing the limits, I think. Like I said, like, you know, understanding things at a basic level, knowing where to stop, knowing when to call someone. Like, that's kind of a skill in itself.
Well, okay. So side note, I looked up a ball valve. So my idea, I don't know if you've ever had ramune, which is like a Japanese bottle soda drink.
No.
And there's
yeah. Where you pop the ball down into it.
The ball down. So I thought it was like that, like a free flowing ball, so it follows the water. But it is actually a ball that sits within the pipe that has like a hole through the center.
Yeah.
Going from side to side, that then when you twist, that hole will either open or close, because it's either the part of the ball that's filled or the part of the ball that has a chamber that passes through it.
Ball
Yeah.
valves.
Yeah,
Ball
so that's how
valve.
that works. So anyway, it's the other skill that you're really using is just like knowing that you don't know, but not being afraid to try and figure out how to learn this thing.
Yeah.
So like it's the ability to say, I don't know what this is, but I'm curious, so let me go find it out. And I think that's a really strong skill set for any number of areas in your life.
Yeah, if any, I think my confidence has gone up significantly in a lot of things. I pride myself a little bit on my problem solving skills, especially like conflict mediation. But when it comes down to like physical like problems that I have to like manually fix, I don't think my confidence levels were as high, because I've always said, like, if you can put me in a room with one or two people who have a problem either with me or with somebody else, like by the time that conversation's over, I think more often than not, people are going to be on the same page and you can kind of move on. With regard to problems like this, my confidence levels were average at best, but now I feel like I can take on 95% of most of the things I encounter with a pretty healthy amount of self-assurance, to an extent, and that extent ends with finding rot in the corner of my house and not having a damn clue what to do about it now that home insurance won't cover it. But
it just sounds like you have a lot more complexities to your house than I have. Like, you've got a well, you've got a UV thing, you've got your ball valves, you've got your deck over top of your roof, you have, you know, I don't know, older plumbing. Like, there's a lot more complexities there, and that's scary. Like, there's a lot more points of failure. And then once I dug into my house and realized how simple it was, I was almost relieved to see, like, oh, I can see every single thing. Like, I can stand in one corner of my house in the basement, look to the other end of the basement, and see all the guts, all the innards. Everything is just there. I know exactly if something fails. I know where to walk to figure it out.
I don't think your basement should have guts and innards in it.
No, probably not. I mean, you're an unconfirmed murderer, so I don't know if there's something to that. I mean,
I thought
how's your
the chat was
basement?
called Unconfirmed Murderers in John.
Oh, well, who named it? That's the question.
You. I don't have a basement. I have a loft.
Oh, okay.
yeah, with a spiral staircase, is it?
Yeah.
Wow, Mr. Fancy.
Are there any
Pants over
innards
me.
or guts? Are there any innards or guts?
There's
Just
not.
because?
There's some cables. I set up so the hole that I referenced that I was gonna drill into the wall earlier. was for my VR setup, and that was the first thing that we actually put on the wall with like screws. We have some things hanging up, but they're just held by those like I think they're called like command strips or something like that, where you just like you rub the wall with some
3M, friend of the show.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Throwback, vintage episode.
Yeah. So that was my first foray into using my drill for good.
Did you use it for bad?
No.
Unconfirmed murderer. Oh, actually, that's a really good point. So when you go to Home Depot, when you see all the things that you can buy, it's almost irresponsible for them to sell us all those things. Like, my God, you can really frick something up with those things. Nail guns, saws, like all the things that they just let you buy. You could
listen, Dan.
There's some bad
this is America.
There's
this
bad
is America.
Stuff, all right. I just thought that was interesting.
That is so. Like, John, living in an apartment. There is a feeling that I remember of like, this isn't my property, therefore putting holes in things seems pretty irresponsible to do. And if I don't do it correctly, my ass is grass.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that when you were trying to put in your VR equipment?
No, I felt no guilt whatsoever. That might be
No, who else doesn't have guilt? Murderers.
No, it's something that Sheen has been very wary about because she's had some issues with security deposits in the past. And I have not, but I've also never like hung stuff up on the wall like that. So it's just kind of like...
You know who else doesn't hang stuff up on the walls? I'll give you one guess.
Murderers?
Murderers. It's murderers.
Okay.
Yep. It's murderers.
So,
3M'd it.
So for me, it's more of like I am resigned to living here, and I want to make the apartment feel as comfortable as I want. So while I'm not gonna like paint anything, I feel like drilling a few small holes, you know, in the right place is not a big deal. But I do understand what you're talking about, like kind of especially the customization that you're talking about is ridiculous, but just like nesting a little bit deeper than one would in an apartment is tricky.
Yeah, that was the hardest bump for me to overcome when I first moved in. Was, hey man, this is yours. Like, you can do whatever the hell you want. You want to break that window, go ahead. Like, but it's on you to fix.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like digging into things, the first project I did was redo this office that I'm sitting in. It was a bedroom that the old owners had, once their kids left, used as an office, but it had yellow walls. It had a blue carpet from the 1970s. It has like these weird custom windows that like have a turn latch that slides on a track, but it's all wood. It's double pane glass and everything, but they're very cool windows. But like, if you break them, I don't know how you're going to replace them. And so like I there was a closet that my computers are in now. And I was like, well, what do I do if I break it? Like, I don't understand. Like, and Nikki's like, do it. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. And at one point it just kind of clicked, like, it doesn't matter, because it's mine to do with as I want. And if it's broken, I have to fix it. And if I can fix it, there's no reason I shouldn't do what I'm trying to do. Yeah. But now that it's done, I see the imperfections all the time. That was the first time I had ever hung drywall, and I did a okay job.
Yeah, that's how I feel about mine too.
Corners suck. I didn't really hang some stuff quite evenly. Sanding was not a top priority for me at the time. And so like I see all these things and I'm like, I'm 100% going to redo this room.
Yeah.
But right now I'm proud of it. It served me a purpose. My molding did, it was okay. It was okay at best. And it took me a while to do. I put in cheap carpet. I'm not going to do that again. It's pretty echoey in here. I need to use, I think, a different foam insulation for the walls once I get back in. And like, I'm cool with that because now I know it's my house to fix. And I know a lot more than I did before, but it took me a while to not be uncomfortable with it.
When you were talking about, I remember you sent us a photo or a video that your wife filmed of you wandering around your property, kind of like planning stuff out.
I was wearing, I had tall socks on, like an A shirt, and I was just literally walking around my perimeter.
It's very dad of you. But you were discussing the projects, and I believe you wrote them all down and then started to kind of like think through the project itself to prioritize, but also understand what the changes would be and how doable they were, kind of like rate them. I feel like that was a great lesson for a lot of things in your life, but especially larger projects like this, is to kind of take some time to figure out what are the problems that you want to solve. And I like the solution-based thinking, like define the problem and then try and figure out a solution that correctly fits that problem. And writing that all down, taking notes, and having that good sense and that plan of like, okay, I want to do this and this is a top priority, really gives you focus for when you have that headspace and that time to be able to work on something like that.
And you find that more things are connected than you originally intend them to be when you write out those lists and start to prioritize the things. Because my list started off thinking it was going to be pretty simple to pick these and do them. And then I realized that, like, let's say there's 28 lines on a page and I've filled my list on a page of 28 things. I can guarantee that almost every single one of those projects now, if you were to take and make a list for each project, takes up at least one page.
Right, if you're details doing about that project.
Bullets, yeah. So like you're talking 28 steps to each thing, but when you're prioritizing them, you need to do them in the right order, or else like over time you're going to make your project less effective.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be damaged based on how you prioritize the one before it. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. Like I have big plans for down the road at my house, 10 years from now, in my property in general. But I know that even if I had the money to do the ones that I really want to do, like I would love a pool. I don't need an in-ground pool because my house is built into a hill. I could get an above-ground pool, which are relatively inexpensive in terms of pools. But there's so much work that has to be done first in order to make it worthwhile and put in well, that I have to, like, the beginning of that project, oddly enough, is make sure that my plumbing system in my house currently has updated features to move my water softener and everything else to the left of where it currently sits. And I have to do that now to plan for having a pool down the road, which is such a strange thing to think about because right now my water system is in front of my electrical panel, like right in front of it. And you're supposed to have 36 inches of workable space in front of your electrical panel. So I don't know why the old owners would have done that when all they had to do when they set this up was
move it over,
bend the PEX pipe that's bringing the water into the house to the left, and extend that over a little bit. And so
well, maybe you'll figure out when you try and move it.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Well, that's what you realize all these dumbass owners before you made stupid decisions.
But
made your life a lot harder.
These people that were doing the work beforehand knew a lot more about DIY, like just doing things, not about longevity of how this is supposed to work better.
Right.
And so like I am very thoughtful and purposeful when it comes to long-term big picture stuff. But I am also improving daily on my small detail mindedness. And so seeing those, I feel like really good about making the plans now. So if you go into my laundry room now in the basement, there's a sliding door. You slide that open, and to your left is my water filtration for drinking from the tap. They put in like one of those cool sink. You pull the little lever on the sink, and there's like filtered drinking water. and I already have really, really good well water. And so like that's on the wall right when you walk in, and then there's the utility sink, and then like an open drain pipe. And that open drain pipe is attached to the utility sink drain, so that P-trap goes down, connects to this copper pipe that sticks up, and then I have the drain line for the washer, the drain line for the sink upstairs above it, the drain line for the dishwasher above it, and that leads into a permanent pipe that runs outside, and that does not go to my septic system. That literally runs
Drains
outside.
into the water, or drains into the yard?
It drains into, I have a drop off behind my house, and it literally drains out into that drop off.
Nice.
That drop off drain is also tied in with my drain tile system. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah. It's just such a weird thing.
Yeah.
That like at some point in the 60s, it didn't matter. And they just went, yeah, we're just going to dump our sink water essentially out there. And our septic water will go into the septic. And we won't think anything of it. You know? And so I didn't know that until a few months ago when I was walking around my property and I saw that there was water coming out of this thing and it hadn't been raining. And then I knew that Nikki was upstairs doing dishes and running the dishwasher. And I was like, holy shit, this is literally where this all goes.
It all goes to the same place anyway, really.
Yeah, when you move that pipe, or when you get past that pipe, it's washer, dryer, and then when you get past that, it's water softener, electrical panel, UV filter, and then it's a wall. And I was like, all right, well, this doesn't work anymore, and I don't have enough space to move it. And so I know that when I do this for later, I'm going to move it so that my utility sink is the first thing that's on your left when you're in there, followed by a stackable washer dryer, so that I can move my water softener and that filter and the UV filter next to it, so that you have the 36 inches of space in front of the electrical panel for full access. And then I'll have a workable space in there that utilizes it all, so that I can upgrade whatever systems I need to upgrade to add to that electrical panel for later on when I need to add lines to my breaker box for a pool and or a hot tub and or a, let's say I need another 220 line in my garage, whatever. Now there's a workable space there, and the laundry room can look less like a shitty laundry room and more like one of those West Coast elite laundry rooms.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. That's the thing. Like, it's just so exciting thinking about all these improvements that you can make, and it's so satisfying doing the work yourself. Like, there's no greater satisfaction, I think, than working on your home, making it better, improving the little things to make your life easier. It's just so great.
So y'all have a couple of projects going right now. Can I ask what y'all are most excited to work on next?
Yeah, so I think it's probably clear at this point, but I never really gave the backstory. So I'm working on renovating the basement, which previously had been finished, half of it. It was finished in the 60s. I even found a note behind the wall saying this was finished by X, Y, and Z person in 1962, I think, or 64. So there was no insulation on the walls. It was like this felt roofing paper that was attached to the inside of the studs, and then there was wood paneling over it that had been painted. So it was very cold down there. There was carpet that was just glued to the cement, so that wasn't so great. And then the ceiling tiles I had them tested for asbestos, so they were not asbestos, but they were just square 12-inch ceiling tiles. And the ceiling is fairly low as well, so it's only like a 7-foot ceiling. So I knew that I wanted to open it all up, and I wanted to dig into everything, and I wanted to install a laundry room because the laundry was just on the unfinished side, and just make it a better living space. I knew I wanted to put some insulation down there. I wanted to make it a second living room, essentially. Also a spot for workout equipment, things like that. So I ripped out everything, rented a dumpster, just ripped everything out, put insulation into the existing studs that were there, built a couple walls, built out the laundry room, insulated drywall, ran some new electrical for lights, did the plumbing work with my dad when he visited. Put in a countertop and a sink.
You had to frame some stuff, right?
Sorry, say again?
You had to frame some stuff?
Yeah, I had to build a wall, so I had to frame out a wall, a couple walls. So basically framing the entire laundry room area because it was just an open space previously. So framing, I had to buy all the tools for that, obviously. Bought a nail gun, compressor, everything I could possibly need. And then put in the countertop and the sink, which was an interesting challenge because the sewer drains at about knee height. It goes out through the concrete wall of the basement at about knee height. So if you put a sink in, you don't really have an option of curving the drain line into the sewer pipe. So now we set it up so that the sink drains into a lift pump. A lift pump. So it goes into the lift pump, and then as the lift pump itself fills up, it triggers it to drain it. So it pumps the water up out of the pump into the septic. So we had to reconfigure quite a bit of plumbing to make sure that was going to work. And then after that, it was, just finishing the main area, doing all the walls. I carved out under the stairs some drywall, and I put another countertop under there. That's what I was working on today. And I'm really close to being done. I just have to finish up the floor. I have to put a floor in, and I have to finish up the countertop that I just mentioned under the stairs. And then I'm also going to build some slide out drawers under the stairs, sort of as the stairs connect to the floor as they come down in that triangle area. We're going to put some pull out drawers. So I'm just most excited to be done because I've been doing this since August. I just want to be done. I want to enjoy the spot. I bought a TV. It's going to be a sweet, 65-inch TV with this new couch and all that stuff. So it's going to be a really sweet hangout spot once we're done. And I should mention also for the ceiling, instead of putting the ceiling tiles back or doing a drywall, we just painted it. So we have the maximum headspace you possibly can get. So it's a little low, but you're not going to hit your head or anything. So it's much nicer having a little bit of extra headroom rather than feeling more claustrophobic with the tiles above your heads.
Right. It's just bare piping and stuff now, right?
Yeah, for the most part. There was it's mostly open. It's mostly open, meaning there's not a whole lot of pipes. There's not a whole lot of exposed electrical or anything like that. There was a spot where beneath the bathroom, which is upstairs, right underneath that, there was the drain for the tub. So that stuck down past the ceiling joists, but my dad and I were able to tuck that a little bit higher up underneath. So it didn't stick down. You're not going to hit your head on anything. And I also took out an old bar that was down there. I forgot to mention that. So that was a bar that was installed in the 60s as well, which is kind of gross. And they did a whole lot of molding and trim around it to cover up the pipes. So you can imagine the low ceiling, the low pipes, the low vents, all of the AC work that was down there, they covered it up even more. So they basically made what was hanging down even larger by covering it. So I just exposing it all, it doesn't look, finished in that sense, but it looks, it just kind of looks industrial. It doesn't look ugly. It's just, I gained the most amount of headroom I possibly could gain. And it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of freaking work, and I'm ready to be done. But I don't feel overwhelmed, stressed out, annoyed, not wanting to do it. I'm just ready to be done at this point. I'm still motivated to go down there and work, but I want to enjoy it at this point.
Even after that broken drill bit?
Yeah, broken drill bit.
I've broken so many fucking drill bits.
That was my first one.
It's gonna happen a million times over because you want to buy cheap built drill bits because they're just drill bits, but the next one I'm gonna buy really nice ones so that I have less likely to break them.
I just brought the cheap Ryobi brand kit, so I gotta buy nicer ones. But today it's the countertop going in underneath the stairs. So I put the cabinet in. I've got a cabinet on the left side. I've got a 4-foot piece of butcher block that goes on top of the cabinet. And then the butcher block just overhangs to nothing, right? So I have to put some boards up on the wall to support the countertop laying on it.
Right.
And so my issue now is that everything is great. I've got the countertop in, and I've got the back wall. I've got the board against the back wall right where I need it to be. But on the right side, because I didn't plan ahead and I didn't think I was doing this, I didn't do the framing in such a way that I have anything to screw the board to. So I have to potentially cut out drywall. That's the worst case scenario. to put in another stud or some kind of like cross member that I can then screw the board to and then therefore rest the countertop on. So I'm kind of in trouble now, and I felt underneath the drywall because I didn't extend all my drywall down to the floor. I felt underneath it and I can feel that there's a stud there, and I know it's there, and I know it goes straight up from where it is, but I follow it up and I try to screw a nail in or screw a screw into it, and it just doesn't hit anything. So I don't know what I did, and I don't have a picture. And this is where I said take pictures. I don't have a picture of what I did to know exactly where the framing is, and therefore where I can screw into. So
I thought you sent us a picture of under the stairs.
Yeah, so I found it, and I'm looking at the picture, and I'm like, there should be a stud here. Like, I don't know why my screw isn't hitting it. Like, maybe my screws aren't long enough, but I've got screws that are like at least 3 inches long. I don't understand why it's not hitting it. So
that's weird.
Yeah, that's my current struggle. That's why I was like a minute late, because if I had not had that problem, I would have had a finished cabinet and countertop underneath the stairs, and I was able to come up here and start recording right after that. That would have been satisfying, but now my head's been thinking about that all day, because that's what I find myself doing. If I don't finish, or if I'm stuck on something, I just like zero in on it in my brain
forever.
And I can't think about anything else until it's done.
So wait, is this the last step? The countertop, or you still have to paint the wall?
So drywall's in, which again, just like Cody said, pain in the ass. But the good thing about drywall is that I go to other people's houses, and I also look in other rooms of my house, and I see shitty drywall work, and I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good about what I did. Like, it makes me feel much better knowing that like no drywall is perfect. It's really hard to do, to get it perfectly flat, smooth, sanded, nice. It just takes time. It's not hard, it just takes time. And I don't really want to spend that much time on it because it's a basement and I don't really care that much.
You start to make concessions about where, like, you're like, no one's going to care about this.
Like, on one hand, don't skip a step. Like, don't cause yourself problems. You know, don't make it so it looks bad, but you know when to cut corners because you just don't really need perfection, like in some areas. But though the drywall's in, I primed it, painted it, so that's good. Ceiling's painted, lighting's in, everything's done. Except for the floor and under the stairs. And I have to put I have to put a ceiling in the laundry room area, because that's just exposed piping and I didn't paint that ceiling. And I also want a ceiling in there just to feel a little more finished, because when you're doing laundry, like, you don't want to have any kind of cobwebs in corners or anything like that. I want to make it a little bit sealed, nice looking. So I have to do that, and I think half of the room is probably going to end up being a drop ceiling, just so I can, or some kind of access to all the pipes and all the shutoffs, and then the rest of the room is going to be probably drywall. I don't know. It's a pain to drywall above your head, so I don't know.
That's what I literally just did, and it was awful.
It's terrible. So. And so then that's the floor, and I have to put 2 doors in, like man doors. I'm going to do solid core doors to try to block some sound from the laundry.
Oh, yeah. My house has a lot of hollow door or hollow core, and I hate it. I hate it.
So this was a huge process, as you could imagine. Like, I don't know, you guys, you saw me do, like, I didn't do CAD drawings, but I found like this software. SketchUp? It's called, no, I started with SketchUp, and then I was like, I can't figure this out. Home Designer Suite 2021. I downloaded that program, and I was able to map out pretty close, I mean, within a couple inches, a diagram of my entire basement at the time. And it was pretty easy to do because it was just a rectangle with a couple walls. And then I tried to start mapping out exactly what I want the laundry room and the open area to look like. Mm-hmm. But as you do it, you realize, like, you're going to have to make some adjustments. And those plans are, pretty accurate from what I thought I was going to end up with, but ended up changing up quite a bit as we went.
It's good to get like a baseline sense of it.
Yeah, I had a pretty solid starting level to figure out exactly what I wanted this to be, but then it morphed into something else. But for the most part, it's become exactly what I hoped, and I'm impressed with myself, honestly. I'm very happy with the work that I've done. No major issues, just a couple setbacks, like stupid stuff, like, getting ahead of myself or not measuring right, or, little dinky little things like that. But there were no major fails and no major issues that popped up. And it's crazy to think, like, it's only middle of December, but August was when I started. And I've come so far, like, from demolition day of loading up that dumpster. I did everything myself. It was just nuts. I can't believe how much work I've done.
It's pretty
awesome.
satisfying stuff.
It really is.
I think using the word exciting is not in my vocabulary for this next project, but the thing that I have to do next is fix my house, like that corner that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I want to come
for
help you
those-
for that.
for those
Yeah,
that don't know, which is only John and Dan really, they're the only ones who do know. I was stacking wood the other day because we have 2 fireplaces in our house, and my house, they built an addition in 1990. In 1990, there was a deck built off the side of my house, and from the front yard, it is at ground level, and from the backyard, it's up 1 story, and they used it as like a kind of like an outdoor garage, sort of like a car park, but they kept their lawnmower back there. They had like a workbench back there and stuff like that. But in 1990, they made that a full addition to the house. And in that addition is what we call the way back, which is sort of like an office, library, yoga room, whatever. And there's a bathroom down there, a full bath, a big storage room. And then above it is still the exact same size deck. And it is beautiful. It's really nice. It is big, though. It's like 20 by 30 feet. And I was really excited to redo that deck this coming summer because I really want to cover half of the deck with a roof. At our old house, we had a really nice patio that was like a stone-floored patio, and Nikki just loved it. She would be out there every single night just kind of writing and listening to music and doing whatever. But our deck now is too hot because the sun rises on that side and it stays until like 6 or 7 o'clock at night in the summer. So it just bakes you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very, very
Super
excited to
hot.
do that. But as I was stacking this wood, I looked over and the steps that lead up to it cover the one end. And it's graded toward those steps, and there's gutters that run down to the drain tiles. And there was an icicle that was hanging the 3 feet from the corner of the deck down to the ground. And I was like, that's not good. I don't know why that's there. So I crawled underneath and looked at it. And there was water coming out from behind the flashing, which leads, by the gutter. And I was like, shit, I don't know why this is here. And so I couldn't see anything else. No other damage, no other anything. And so I pulled off the corner panel. I have tongue and groove cedar paneling on my house. And I pulled it off. And on the inside corner of this, it was just like dust and rot. And my whole body just wanted to crumble into itself.
I can't imagine.
For 2 feet in either direction under this house now in this corner, it's just rotted out. And I didn't know what to do. So I filed a homeowner's claim knowing that it probably wasn't going to cover it, because what it is it's the deck is above a rubber roof. And so they just roll rubber out and they seal the thing. And that's supposed to stay for like, I don't know, a long time. Very, very long time, in fact. But at some point, something went wrong there and water started to get behind and underneath and didn't make it to the gutter.
So, like, how far up the roof do you think the entry point for water is? Like 6 inches, or is it like further way up?
No, my guess is it is 30 feet from the end of my house, which is like the office, bathroom, bedroom wall, to the end of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
I am pretty sure that whatever the issue is about 10 feet from the end of the deck.
Okay. So
it could be worse.
To get to that, you're going to have to take apart the deck, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that I have to do is, I think, take off the soffit, take off the gutter, and start to peel up the deck to see where it goes, and pull off the panels until the rot stops.
Yeah.
See how it's getting in, see how big it is, then figure out how much damage it did inside of that. But now we're in winter.
Yeah.
And so I can't do a ton other than kind of protect it from the elements and make sure it's secure. Like, not ruining the integrity of the house any longer, because I don't know how long this has been here anyway.
Yeah.
It clearly was happening before we bought the house and wasn't noticed in the inspection because it was covered.
Right.
But home insurance doesn't cover roofs, period.
Which is ridiculous.
Unless there has been plumbing that burst, there has been collapse that was hidden, or there was a tree or lightning.
Sounds like you have collapse that was hidden.
It's not collapse because the structure didn't collapse.
What if you wait longer?
Well, now it's noticed. So if I don't fix it now and it collapses, I'm still not getting covered because I didn't do anything to fix it.
Oh, man.
And so I have to deal with this now. But we got 10 inches of snow the other day, so I can't even like get to the area to see what's happening. But when it thaws in the next few days, I'm going to see more water come through because I can't stop it from happening. And if I uncover it all and can't fix the thing, all of a sudden I'm in worse trouble than I was before.
Right.
But on the inside of the house, there is no water damage. There's no soft drywall. There's nothing. The only thing that I have noticed is I have can lights in the downstairs hallway, which is pretty much below where this is all happening. And if you pull one out, it is cold as shit above one of them. And that is the mark of about 12 feet into the deck. And so I think that from that point to the other is somewhere there. It's, that's the problem, but I don't think it's damaged much, if it's damaged anything at all. But we'll see, because oddly enough, and you guys know this, I found a photo album that I think is the coolest thing that I have ever discovered. So the old owners were an older couple. They were pretty dope. I mean, they were pretty cool people. The lady was an old art teacher at the high school down the road from me, and he was like a car salesman or something. He owned a car dealership, and they just did a lot of work around the house, and they maintained the property pretty well. And they left behind, so far they've left behind like three things. One was this like old school wooden ruler, like a ruler stick. It was cool. It's like 7 feet tall. One thing was a paddle from his fraternity when he was in college.
Wow.
And the other was this photo album. And in this photo album is a 120 some odd picture album of the addition that I am talking about that I've had problems with.
Like being built.
Yeah. From what it was to what it is now, step by step, what it's made of, pouring the concrete, the rotted part brand new, where the septic system is, which was a thing I was trying to figure out, and like what it's made of, where the plumbing goes, where the electrical runs, what kind of insulation they used, like everything. And so if I can, look at that and reference that as I'm trying to do this, hopefully I won't have to call someone to do it for me, because I'm going to save the majority of my money doing it myself with the help of, my friends when they can come and we have a vaccine, as long as I don't need to fix it immediately. If I can stop the water from getting in, I can fix the rest when it comes to spring. And then I can have my 2 architecture friends, just come and help. And then, take care of it all. But like this photo album has been like a godsend for me for all of my projects moving forward on that side of the house. And I'm really excited about it. I just don't want to have to spend money on this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
That's the shitty thing, spending money on stuff that shouldn't be broken.
Yeah, because I didn't anticipate this happening. So that puts a lot of my other projects on hold.
Yeah.
But it's going to give me an idea of whether or not I can actually put a half a roof on there. Because you worry about load, like carrying like dead load, live load, and all that stuff. And because it's technically a roof as is, putting a roof on that roof, you have to make sure you have the supports in the right place.
Yeah.
Even though it's only going to be supporting snow. Like no one's ever going to walk on that roof if I cover half of that deck. But you need to make sure that it's going to be able to hold. And that means there needs to be a load-bearing beam downstairs to hold that load upstairs.
And if it's rotted away, you got to have something to screw to.
Yeah, exactly. So like we'll figure it out. I'm inquisitive about it at best. I'm not excited about it because it's causing me a lot of stress at the moment. But I'm learning a lot as I go, and this whole experience is like teaching me like a lot more than just how to do things around my house, but rather how to solve problems better and how to work through shitty emotions better and how to, communicate a little bit differently. And there's a lot to it. And those are the things about like lifelong learning that I don't think I appreciated much until I was in my mid-20s is if school's not for everybody, owning your house and living life, being in a caring relationship or investing in people, those are the things that like make lifelong learning real and like valuable to you. Is that like if you reflect on your own life and the growth that you are focused on, you'll realize how much you learn about yourself and how much better you are as a person when you face stuff like this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In your marriages, in your business endeavors, in your careers, and it had nothing to do with PEMDAS, like it's all about kind of like evaluating and introspectively reflecting on your growth and like your potential growth too is huge with all of this stuff. And in the meantime, you learn, about water softeners.
It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it.
And then one day John's going to be able to do the same shit.
Yeah.
Well, I am hoping to be a part of I wanted to come out and help Dan with his things as you did when we first started talking about this stuff, because that would have been a blast. It would have been a great learning experience for me. But hopefully, Dan and I can come out and help with the rot situation.
Yeah.
As long as we can get this shit on lock.
Yeah.
I think like one of the most exciting parts about all this is that so like I'm a pretty social guy, and I am lucky enough to my friend groups are pretty like they're separate, but I know that if I got all of my friends from the different groups together, every single person would get along. So for, oddly enough, there aren't many people that hang out with people from high school, but like Dan and myself, we're 17 years, 16 years, whatever that is. My closest friends to date, with the exception of you, John, and my friend Matt, are people that I have been friends with for almost the entirety of my life.
Yeah.
The people I rely on the most, the people that like I confide in the most. And so like all of my friends from high school or childhood, I want to come out and like do this thing essentially, because we usually have that party in the summer. Like, why not like have a COVID-free party where we all kind of just like hang out for a week, do the thing on my deck, and I'll pay literally everybody in, endless food and drink, and we'll hang out every night and we'll do all this stuff and just get all my friends out and we hang out for the first time in a year and a half.
Sounds amazing.
That's kind of what I want to go for.
I'm in.
So I just got to figure out how to patch this thing for the time being. And if I need a jack post to keep it up, then I'll do that. And I don't know if there's anything other than that, but like, thanks for everybody listening to us talk about our, houses.
Yeah.
This is Dive. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay,
is that how
bye.
we want to end it?
I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm going to go poop now.
Okay.
Cool.
See you
All right.
there.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.